All right, thank you everyone for joining us here tonight. My name is Kirsten, and together with my sister Lynn, we created the Anti-Racist Table as a way to bring anti-racism to life as a daily practice. We do that for people who are new, and this is your first time learning about the Anti-Racist Table. We do this primarily with our free 30-day challenge, which we curated. It's got art, it's got music, it's got reading, it's got videos, it's got podcasts, it's got everything you need to really develop a foundational place to start with this work. We help educate you, we deal with emotionality, we help you get to the place where you can see what anti-racism means for you and in your life. So we are excited that we just upgraded our platform, and now it makes it much easier to self-pace. You can go in and do your lesson, and then you can come back when you're ready to do the next lesson. It's wonderful to do by yourself, to do collectively with a group of people. So we encourage you to check it out at the antiracist.table.com. We also do these conversations around the table, which is why we're here tonight with our wonderful guest. And we'll get to that in just a minute, but I'm going to turn it over to Lynn to do our land acknowledgement.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so happy to have you here, and we're especially happy to have Dr. Peggy McIntosh with us. But before we get started, I would like to call on my ancestors to stand with me as I acknowledge the land that we are sitting on. This land acknowledgement is inspired by Ruth King, who is an African-American mindfulness practitioner. And as we all work to heal our relationships with the Indigenous people and the land that we occupy, this is a good first step. So I encourage everyone to find out the land that they are occupying and offer this awareness every day as a first step. So I'd like to call on my ancestors to stand with me as I acknowledge the native custodians of this land. The colonizers call it Washington, D.C. It is the Anacostan, Piscataway land and people. Those people that are named, unnamed, known, unknown, past and present. We honor all traditions and traditional custodians of this region. And we recognize their continued connection with this land, with this water, and with this community. We pay respect to the earth, whose generous resources sustain us every day. And we pay respect to the enslaved African people of this land who were bought, held, sold here, and all of their descendants, and all of the people throughout this world who are living in captivity. We pay respect to their spiritual labor, and we pay respect to our ancestors whose unwise relationship to race and racism we have inherited. We pay respect to our teachers, to our elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all of the young people today who are teaching us. We honor this gathering, everyone here, and especially our guest, Dr. McIntosh, for taking the time and energy to be with us on this important journey and work on becoming anti-racist and bringing anti-racism into life as a daily practice. May we recognize that we all share an aspiration for liberation to be free in heart, mind, and body. Ashe, here ends our land acknowledgement.
Thank you.
And with to the chat also, if you want.
I did.
Website. You did. Okay, awesome.
I did put it in the chat. If people want to look up the land where they are, they can find it on that website. And now I would like to introduce our guest, Dr. Peggy McIntosh. Peggy McIntosh is a Senior Research Associate of the Wellesley Centers for Women at Wellesley College. She is the founder of the National SEED Project on Inclusive Curriculum. SEED stands for Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity. She is the author of White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, which she wrote in 1989, as well as a book of 16 essays entitled On Privilege, Fraudulence, and Teaching as Learning, published by Routledge in 2020. And Lynn, if you want to go to the next slide, I think you have the slide up with Dr. McIntosh's book.
Oh, yeah, I don't, but I can put that one up.
Okay.
Here. Would you like that one now?
Yes, please, just so people can see it. So there's a picture of Dr. McIntosh's book, and you can find it at wherever you buy books. So please check that out, as well as Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And we'll put a link in the chat as well for that. And with that, we are so honored and excited to have Dr. McIntosh here tonight with us. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you.
You're very welcome. One reason I am with you is because of Dr. Brenda Flies with Hawks of the Cherokee Nation, on whose behalf I said a prayer for this event, so that the wholeness of her vision to her Native people gets transferred to the way we think about power within this session. My own ancestors were on Algonquin land. Massachusetts is a name from Algonquin Indians, and it means big hill, but not bigness in the boastful sense, just in a descriptive sense, that Blue Hill on the Massachusetts Bay was something that the creator had put there as to italicize the coastline. And I feel very proud of the way Indian people here thoroughly settled the land before the so-called settlers from England arrived. The place, New England, was filled with thriving groups of people, many of whom were killed off through the pandemics introduced from Europe and England. Well, I love to talk about how I came to see white skin privilege. It had to do with being here at Wellesley College, giving a seminar once a month for interested faculty members from all over New England, or New York and New Jersey. Interested faculty members who wanted to join in the business of thinking through, how do we get women into the liberal arts curriculum? And the men who came to these seminars, which each lasted 5 hours with a nice dinner in the middle, the men were wonderful. Even though the subject could have threatened them, it didn't appear to. How to put women into the liberal arts curriculum. However, I noticed that we got off to a great start every year. 22 people sitting in a beautiful location at Wellesley College, looking over a lake, and being in very good conversation about what was then the beginnings of women's studies. I did this seminar from 1979 to 85. But I noticed that as the academic year went on, the men and the women began to sit separately at dinner, didn't appear to want to talk to each other as much as the head wanted to in September. And I thought I was doing something wrong to make this gender tension in the midst of this seminar, but I wanted more money to continue it. So I thought I would tell the Andrew Mellon Foundation that my facilitation wasn't excellent. I didn't appear to make bonding between the men and the women, all studying women. But that if they'd give me another $325,000, I would mend my ways and facilitate in a different way. So I hope they would let me do that. Then I began to notice the men at times, though they were wonderful men, insulted us without our noticing it. The first time I really registered on that, a woman in the seminar raised this question: can't we study women earlier? Can't we put the women into the curriculum from the freshman year onward? And a very nice man, in perfectly good faith, he was a wonderful seminar participant, so he would explain to us his version of what the problem was. And he said, well, that first year, that freshman year, you're laying the foundation blocks for knowledge in the main intro courses. And when you're trying to lay the foundation blocks for knowledge, you can't put in soft stuff.
Mm.
Now, none of us said anything. I would say I didn't have anything to say. 3 years later, another man, equally wonderful as a seminar participant, said something else which was like a cousin of that first remark. Because once again, it was a woman who had said, you know, we're talking about the senior seminar in which you do the feminist critique of your discipline, but it's too late. We should get women in to the first year courses. And this other man said kindly, well, that first year, the student is choosing their major. Their major is their discipline. And if you want students to think in a disciplined way, you can't put in extras.
Mm.
Now, none of us said anything, neither men nor women, to the idea that women would be extra. But I went away and thought about it and said, well, I think that everybody in the room, including the men, was born of a woman. And come to think of it, everyone in those universities and colleges that are sending people to this seminar, they were born of a woman. And come to think of it, you see, I was a rather slow student on this. By now the year was about 1982. I think, come to think of it, everybody on the face of the earth was born of a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
And why didn't any of us say this? Because it's kind of insulting to be told you're extra. But
Yeah, and soft.
It's kind of insulting to that man's mother to say she's extra to his existence. And I began to frame the question this way: what has been done to his mind to make him think that the woman who gave him birth was extra to his existence?
Mm.
And why didn't any of us rise to the occasion and say something simple like this, that women are half the world's population, and we happen to have given birth to the other half?
Yes, exactly.
We laughed because we were really slow to catch on. And I want to repeat, these men were very nice.
Mhm.
They made they're responsible for my being able to talk to you about this today. They said candid things that were not biased things, but more accounting of how they saw the world. And without them, I wouldn't have waked up.
So how did you wake up to your privilege from as the next level of this awareness that kind of you evolved into and
Well,
writing this?
there's 2 steps to that. The first was when I asked, what has been done to this man's mind to make him think that we're extra? I decided, and he was so nice, I decided maybe niceness has nothing to do with it. And that I have been making a mistake in thinking I had to choose between calling somebody nice and calling them oppressive. I suddenly realized both were possible for men regarding women's studies to be nice and oppressive. And then I thought, these two men who made those comments are just very good students of what they were taught. And I was taught it too. Men have knowledge. Men make more knowledge. Men publish and profess knowledge as professors. Men are in charge of the best known research universities, and men run the best known university presses. And they have internalized, though I wasn't yet using that word, they have drunk in the idea that men are knowers and that knowledge itself is male.
Mhm.
And then I thought of the 17 million volumes at Widener Library at Harvard, which attest to the fact that knowledge is male
Mhm.
and men are knowers. But then I remembered, now this becomes a very unpleasant emotional dilemma. Now it becomes really sickening. I remember that the Combahee River Collective of Black women in the Boston area had said that white women are oppressive to work with. They hadn't said it in so many words, but it's what they meant. They were just too kind to say it in our faces. They were too smart, maybe. But I realized, oh God, do I have to face this? I think I learned a litany just like that, not about males, but about whites. And I think it goes this way. White people have knowledge. White people make more knowledge. White people publish and profess knowledge as professors. Now, by now, I was a professor. White people run the best known research universities. White people run all the best known university presses. And we have taken in that knowledge is white, and
Mhm.
whites are knowers. And I hated the image of myself and of history that brought that to me, but I couldn't get away from it. It was parallel. So my first paper on this subject was titled White Privilege and Male Privilege, a personal account of coming to see correspondences through work in women's studies.
Mhm.
So it's women's studies and the candor of these men that got me into seeing privilege first for men and then so sickeningly for all the people in my ethnic group.
I love how you connected this quote, to become quite sensitive to the ways power work in and around you, in which Adrienne Rich calls your politics of location, that the politics of your location as a man can only see what you can see. As as a woman, you can only see what you can see because you kind of have these blinders on.
As a white,
Right.
especially as a white. Yes. And the blinders have been, you can argue whether we were intentionally taught to be in control, in charge, and have very good views of ourselves, or unintentionally taught that. But in any case, we were taught not to see our politics of location. One of the great American myths of meritocracy is the ground is level, anybody can do what they want. It's just a matter of individual effort or individual brains. That's a big lie. You are born into locations that carry power.
Right.
So once I had seen that I had power as a white person over the curriculum, then I I registered on the fact that the Mellon Foundation and every foundation that had given me any money, by now I had had 17 grants, they were all run by whites. They were the big financial philanthropies run by whites. So the decisions on grants were being made by whites. So then I thought I'd seen very ugly truths, but important. And I asked myself, what else did I get at birth except whiteness and the financial and educational systems being on my side because I was white? What else is there that I got by birth? My mind wouldn't answer, and I kept asking. I'm in the habit of having conversations with my mind, and it wouldn't answer whether there was anything but the money system and the knowledge system working for me. And finally, I went to bed one night almost shouting. My husband says I wasn't shouting, but I was urgently asking, demanding, if I have anything I didn't earn except the money system and the knowledge system working for me, show me. And in the middle of the night, up swam an example. And I flicked on the light, I wrote it down. I was very disappointed. I thought, this is a big bunch of nothing. In the morning, I still thought of it as trivial when I looked at it, but it became the first of 46 examples. And it is filled with hedges of a kind that I think I specialize in, that is not trying to exaggerate too much. So it was this example. I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. Oh, there it is. Thank you. There it is.
Welcome.
I can if I wish. Now, I thought it was trivial. Now I think it's huge. Keeps me from having to feel like the only or the lonely. Other ones that I know most of you have read this already, but I'm going to specialize in drawing attention to number 6. When I'm told about our national heritage or about civilization, I'm shown that people of my color made it what it is. Number 7, I could be sure that my children would be given curricular materials that corroborate the existence of their race. And number 8, if I want to, I can be pretty sure of finding a publisher for this piece on white privilege. Sure enough, Harvard University Press called right away when this was published in '89. I said, yes, you can publish it if you publish it beside a work by a person of color who doesn't have white privilege. Then we'll have 2 testimonies. They said they didn't have the space. I said, oh, that's all right, I'll cut mine in half and then we can share the space. And then they got back to me. No, I had to call them. What was your decision? And they said, we can't do that. We don't publish small articles.
Oh
So
my
I said,
goodness.
I said, no, thank you. So I said no to Harvard University Press. That was a sacrifice, but whites can get something else, you know?
Yeah.
So I lost the footnote, Harvard University Press, 1989. I didn't get to write that footnote, but I'm so glad I said no. I'll go to my grave thanking my stars that I said no. So a great many of my presentations have been co-presentations with one or more people of color. I'm going to read a little bit more from this. I want to thank your manager, editor, producer for putting it on.
You're welcome. One day we'll have a managing editor, producer. Right now it's just us 2.
Number 12 is about Number 12, I'm pointing at it here. I can swear.
Mhm.
It's about being seen as an individual rather than a carrier of group problems. I can swear or dress in secondhand clothes or not answer my letters without having, I should have said white people, without having white people attribute these choices to the bad morals, the poverty, or the illiteracy of my race. I'm going to tear on now for number 15. I'm never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. Nobody ever asks me, what's the white attitude on this? Number 19. This one, I should be weeping as I read it because it's so much in our face now with the killings by cops. 19, if a traffic cop pulls me over or if the IRS audits my tax return, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race.
Yeah.
And I'll end with 4 of them. I can go home from most meetings of organizations I belong to, feeling somewhat tied in rather than isolated, out of place, outnumbered, unheard, held at a distance, or feared. And then number 24, I can be sure, this is so relevant in a pandemic, I can be sure if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me. And if my day, week, or year is going badly, I need not ask of each negative episode or situation whether it has racial overtones. And finally, I can choose blemish, cover, or bandages in so-called flesh color and have them more or less match my skin.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, Dr. McIntosh, that you noticed all of those inequalities back then as a white person, that you actually chose to see your whiteness and do something about it. Because, again, here, privilege is when you think about something, it's not a problem because it's not a problem to you personally. This was not a problem for you personally, but yet you dug so deep and dived so deep into seeing that there was so many inequalities around you to create this.
You notice,
For white
though,
people.
you notice it was my unconscious that saw. Night after night, it gave me these examples from the middle of sleep. I believe that all of us have a very busy subconscious or unconscious, I don't know how the psychologists are now talking about it, but we know about power relations that we have not been empowered to speak about in public. Like little children know school isn't fair, but they're not allowed to start the day knowing that and end it knowing it even more and saying it. They're not allowed. So I think it's amazing that my subconscious gave me example after example, even though I disrespected it. This is trivial, I thought that first night. This is a big bunch of nothing.
Right, but the more it kept coming, I guess the more you realized.
Yes. I urge others to really listen to their dreams, really listen to their subconscious. And Dr. Brenda Flies with Hawks, our Cherokee consultant in SEED, has implored us again and again to trace, treasure, and learn from our dreams. Now, you may not have dreams that come in the form of a plot. These were just dreams that told me about power relations, and about unearned advantage. And I decided, while I was writing it down, the same voice that gave me those examples.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Woke me up in the middle of the night and said, you better write this down. It's probably the most important work you'll do in your lifetime. And it has turned out to be that. But my own institution wouldn't publish this at first. They said it's just anecdotal, it's not research. And it has no footnotes. And finally, and then I made $20,000 charging copyright fee at 50 cents per copy because it was being used in academic departments all over the country.
Wow.
And so the next year I went back and said, I'm getting a lot of money from this. Why can't we publish this as a center and then you can charge $6 for it and the whole center will get the money? And they turned it down a second time. They said, we're sorry, it's just not scholarship. And it doesn't have footnotes. And then the unconscious mind woke me up and shouted, Freud didn't have footnotes. So I took that to the committee filled with PhDs in social sciences. And they looked at each other and they said, okay.
Well, that's important because, you have to be fearless doing this work. You have to be brave, then you have to look truth in the face, and that's the thing that I feel like you show as a perfect example. But I'm just wondering, you wrote this so many years ago, but it's so relevant now, and we're still dealing with the same issues. Like you even mentioned, reading some of, your examples of having this extra privilege that's, can you talk a little bit more about the components of it and like how it's relevant now, why it's so hard for white people to realize that they have privilege? And any advice that you have for anyone who's trying to see their privilege?
I'll start with the advice. Once you've seen some of this, there's a big temptation to preach. I think it's better to testify, not to your opinions, but to your experience. There's a huge difference. And what I was doing was testimony. The reason that list was marginally acceptable to so many people is that it was a list of my experiences, not my opinions. So for those doing this kind of work, I urge you to set up places like seed seminars where everyone may testify to their own experience and then listen to the others. That is a great teaching tool for understanding. Well, I guess that's the main thing I want to say about advice. But if you are asked to speak as a white person, it's good to have one or more people of color. I'm so glad you sisters register yourselves as Black women. And I used to say, yes, I will speak if I can have a co-presenter to share the money, the time, and the publicity. And sometimes the hardest part of that is getting to make sure that the publicity spotlights two of you. When I would come into a university and be the one from outside, the PR department would usually spotlight me. That was wrong. So I'd have to spend a lot of time talking about our equal humanity as speakers, co-speakers. Also, sometimes the greater risk in talking about white privilege was being taken by the person of color who was co-presenting. That person should be honored for their courage, their bravery, their testimony to their own experience. So the work appeared to go forward. I published those things in 88, then 89, and then subsequent papers, which you can read, which are on privilege and are in my book. Then along came the Trump presidency, and the undercurrent of resistance to the idea of privilege was suddenly legitimized, magnified, and horrible racism was enacted during Trump's presidency, while he all the while was saying, I'm the least racist person you'll ever meet. That made me feel, well, our work on white privilege awareness has really been set back forever. Now, along came Biden, and on the first day of his presidency, he rescinded 17 orders, executive orders written by Trump, and many of them had racism built into them as executive orders. So then I thought, well, so we haven't lost everything. But it's important for those who understand the power of circumstance to continue to say the United States hasn't been given equal chances to everybody. It's important that we keep saying, everybody has a combination of unearned advantage and unearned disadvantage. And we have some say in how we choose to spend the privilege, the advantage that we were given. And I have a list that I wanted to read from about the variables in that. All of us may have either advantage or disadvantage from any of these factors. Your body shape, your body size, your place in the birth order of your family, your hair, your relation to relatives, your relation to educational structures, your relation to regions, your relation to religions, your relation to social classes, your relation to physical ability, your parents' nations of origin, your parents' relation to money, your parents' relation to formal education, your parents' relation to English, your parents' experience of travel, your gender identity, your sexual orientation, your employment, your parents' employment history, their ethnicity and yours, the region of the nation that you're in and that you have been in, and what was projected onto that region by others. And I think I'll end with your relation to the economic power structure in which there's such a gap between the rich and the poor. Now, all of us have a combination. Nobody got here scot-free. All of us have some disadvantage, and all of us have some advantage. And what I think now that Trump has made racism, has given license to it, and has also given us, he's not the only one, lots and lots and lots of his followers would do the same, license to look down on those who've struggled in any way. Now it's up to us to decide, are we going to buckle under and be afraid, which is what they want, or will we try to, in daily ways, use the power we have to weaken the systems of power that gave so much to so few? And it's a kind of daily thing. And I can't claim that every day I do things that weaken the economic and racial system of the country or the gender system. Mm-hmm. But I think, like many people listening, you do things. For example, you chose to join the challenge that the sisters have put for you. You chose to listen tonight. That's action. Thank you. And we can feel our way day by day.
Yes. So considering, how to use power to weaken unjust systems of power, in your experience, Dr. McIntosh, what was your racial story and what is your connection to whiteness that, is your narrative?
My grandmother on the maternal side grew up in Virginia. My sister and I, two sisters like you two, maybe the whole world should be run by pairs of sisters for a change.
I agree.
They might not get along. That's all right. Then you could have new webinars on how sisters can get along. But we decided to go to Virginia, to Abingdon, Virginia, to find out whether our grandmother grew up in a slaveholding family. And the answer was yes. Now, she was born after emancipation. Still, her family, the land was a small tobacco plantation, and the family, the Hay family, owned 2 slaves. Still, owning another person is the most wicked way to make money. Owning another person. So we found out that was the truth of our background. And my mother, though she tried to hide it from the family, was somewhat wealthy. Now, if you're very old, you will know that this mattered. She received $100 a month from her southern side of the family's holdings. In the 30s, that was a whole lot of money. And I was born at the worst part of the Depression. So though my father had a good paid job as an engineer, still the money helped. It put us through college. I remember when I went to college, the year's tuition was $855 for tuition, room and board at Harvard, which was then for women called Radcliffe. I attribute that money that she was given to the fact that they could put 3 children through college. My sister went to Wellesley. But on that money, on the backs of unpaid people owned by my grandmother's father. So it's a shock to find out how direct that was. And in fact, when we first learned of that connection with slavery for our family, I didn't connect it with the paying of college tuitions. They were in different parts of my mind. It hadn't all come together yet. Our mother had wealth because of the pre-Civil War history of our family. Bad to learn, but good to know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And that's a really important piece, to really be authentic and to learn your, your story, to speak with your elders, to know your ancestral lineage, and also for people who say, Dr. McIntosh, we didn't own slaves, so why does this matter to us? What would you say to those people who are white, maybe immigrants, who've come and pulled themselves up by their bootstraps? What do you say to them?
I'd say, well, I'd say you're not home free, because though you didn't your family didn't own slaves, and that's not your heritage. This culture is filled with hierarchies, and you're not at the bottom of all the hierarchies. If you're sitting here in this place right now watching, you're not at the bottom of every hierarchy. For example, you've got access to a TV screen or a laptop. You're not at the bottom. You may feel nobody ever gave you anything that you didn't work for. But yes, by accidents of birth, there are all those variables that I read that can put you either ahead or behind. But it's not a matter of blame or shame or guilt for being born where you were in the social and economic and educational and linguistic worlds. It's not a matter for blame, shame, or guilt. In fact, they really set you back in thinking. It's better not to get emotional about them as so much as hard-headed. Yes, certain things put me ahead and certain things put me behind. And I have some choice in how to use my energy and my language to either let everything go on as it is, or try to influence going in a more democratic direction of sharing the ability to live with a fair amount of food, water, clothing, shelter, safety, and touching as well. You know, the research on small babies shows that they can be beautifully clothed and fed, but if they're not touched, they have what the pediatricians call failure to thrive, and they die. So to the lineup of food, clothing, water, shelter, and so on, I would add some touching, some connection with other human beings.
Thank you. Thank you for
important.
That. Yeah. We have a question from the audience, Dr. McIntosh, and it's an important one that we really hold close to our heart because we do support reparations. They would like to know, do you support reparations for Black people, and how do you think it could happen? What's your idea around reparations?
Did you say liberation?
Reparations.
Oh, reparations. Well, I favor all the, I would like to be on with a group who discuss this, but I favor all the affirmative action advances that have been made. So when I was at Harvard, there was one Black person in my class. And now at Harvard, but also at Wellesley, more than half the class is people of color. That's a form of reparation. I think it's important to continue it. Now, what about other reparations? My sister decided that she would like a little house in New Hampshire to be given to Indian people by way of reparation. They turned it down on with gratitude, but they turned it down because the community was entirely white, and they didn't feel their indigenous culture was really welcome in that little community in New Hampshire, and they said no thank you. But my sister was working, you can see, with a reparation idea. The land belonged to Indian people. Would they like to have this acreage? It was 25 acres and a little cabin, but they felt that they would be very lonely there and would have no social support or spiritual support for the ways they lived. So, but they thanked her very much. That was a good gesture, you could call it, toward reparations.
Could we, thank you, Dr. McIntosh. Could we talk a little bit about the SEED program, just because we're running out of time and it's such an important program, and we really want people who aren't familiar with it to look into it and to see about, how can they bring it to their school and their community? Can you just tell us a little bit about the SEED program project? I'm sorry.
It's very nice that you have Christine Saxman pictured on the screen now. She's a SEED staff member. Right now, SEED is led by one white woman and 4 people of color. That's the lineup racially of SEED leadership. SEED has started to be for school teachers who wanted to talk with each other and didn't want outside consultants to come in and tell them how to become more inclusive. SEED wanted teachers to be able to get together and talk about what are we teaching and why, and how can we make our teaching, our curriculum and our teaching methods and the whole climate of the school so multicultural, so gender fair, so caring, that every child equally feels included, regardless of their background. So that there isn't a single student who comes to class and feels they don't belong, and that they don't belong in the curriculum, they don't like the teaching methods, and nobody cares. So for that, I started that. I founded it in 1986, and it's still going. Now, the New Leaders Week is held in 3 different sites around the country, and right now the team is preparing 160 to 180 new SEED seminar leaders every summer. Now, SEED seminar meets every month, addressing the questions I just raised. What are we teaching and why, and how can we make the teaching methods in any subject and the whole curriculum and the whole school climate include the basic humanity of every student so they want to be in school? That would be remarkable. When it happens, it's fabulous. Now, people outside of schooling decided, well, we would like to have a monthly seminar for our colleagues. So in that case, whereas a school principal has to fund the participant and the meals, the participant to come to training and the meals that accompany each meeting, it began to be that corporation heads or the head of an art museum or the head of a hospital, these are all real examples, they began to say, we would like to fund a person to come to the training for 1 week and then come back and lead monthly seminars on how we could become a more inclusive organization. So now the next step, I'm working with this question in a small Massachusetts town. May we have a SEED seminar without having it come from an institution? We don't have a school principal to support us, a hospital, a museum, or CEO to provide the money to prepare for SEED leadership. Can we come on our own? And since I'm no longer in charge, it's not my call. But I think my guess is that, and last summer there were 200 people on the waiting list to become SEED seminar leaders.
Wow.
So there's a lot but it's in their hands. The decision is no longer in my hands. But I love that a small community, which has a racial justice committee, wants to have its own SEED seminar.
Yeah.
What it does is alter the life of the SEED seminar leader. It also alters the lives of the people in the group. They get to testify about their experience. They're not asked to learn theory about racism. They talk about their actual experiences with money and with schooling and with health and with neighbors. But they get to talk without arguing.
Yeah.
Argument is really not welcome in a seed seminar. Testimony is, and you learn by listening.
Well, we're going to definitely do more research on the seed.
Now,
And as I
Lynn,
told you, I was a parent. I was a seed parent when my son was in his progressive school. So I want to definitely continue looking into it again and bringing it to more schools and just amplifying it. You've done such good work, and thank you for being such a pioneer for social justice for people of color and Black people when it wasn't really even in fashion. So thank you, Dr. McIntosh, for doing that. And thank you for being with us today. We're already coming to our close, which went too fast. Oh my gosh, we could talk to you forever.
I would
Lynn,
like to thank those who tuned in. I also give you permission to edit this event if it's too politically outspoken.
Oh,
I
it's
don't want
perfect.
you
We're not
all
going
to
to edit you.
suffer from
We're
the
not going
far
to edit
right.
you. We want your whole self, Dr. McIntosh. We're not going to edit you.
Well, I admire the challenge you've set and the people you have attracted to this challenge. It's very heartening. It means that they're interested in doing something, not just deploring the state of the world.
Yeah.
So I hope you're both feeling repaid by having started the table. And by the way, the table is a great image. It's not a podium. It's not a lectern. it's not a dais. I don't even know
where
how
community lives, where community comes and grows. So
And it
hoping.
reminds me of the Black women's group called Kitchen Table Women of Color Press. The people who had the Kitchen Table Women of Color Press are the same ones who started the Combahee River Collective, which wrote about how all of the oppressions are connected. And and although they don't say it in so many words, white women are oppressive to work with.
Yeah, we agree. All the isms, are oppressive. We need to get out of, we need to dismantle all of them.
Yes,
So we're going to just keep hacking away at them one by one, collectively. I agree. So we want to thank you again, and we want to just let our audience know that we are going to have a couple more events coming up this month. We have 3 coming up that are all centering social justice, anti-racism, activism, and so please join us.
Before I leave, I want to hold this up and say,
what is this?
In order to order my book.
Oh, yes. Where can we get your book? Here?
Go to Routledge.
Okay, Routledge.
Okay. Routledge : Peggy McIntosh. They'll take you right to the page.
Okay, that's the only place where we can order it?
No, Amazon has it.
Okay, we don't want to support Amazon.
But
so
I
we're
think
definitely going to go to Routledge.
It's a little bit cheaper from Routledge. It's not cheap anywhere, and that makes me angry that book prices are so high. I think one way for reparations is to have books by and about hierarchy, and especially by and about people of color, that they be discounted so that the publishers don't get so rich.
Yeah, and we need just a real apology. We need to begin there with some atonement. We agree, but
well, we have a reparations petition. If people want to know really our thoughts, they can find it in our petition. I put the link in for your book, Dr. McIntosh, and we'll send it out with the recording. And we're also putting your book on our bookshop.
Yeah.
So
And we do want to also let everyone know our family challenge is almost complete. We're going to be launching that next month, and it's for families with children, kindergarten to 3rd grade, who would like to bring anti-racism into their life and center social justice and equity. It begins at home. It begins in the roots, you know, of the foundations of that you lay with your children. And I'm a kindergarten teacher, so it centers a lot of the work that I do as a Waldorf teacher. So with that, we really want to thank everyone for joining us again tonight. And you can follow us at the Anti-Racist Table. You can join our free challenge there and join our community. We have conversations regularly that highlight different aspects of anti-racism so that we make this more of just a normal conversation and make it you know, something that everyone's joining in. So thank you again and have a good night. Thanks for being with us.
thank you. Good
And
night.
Dr. McIntosh, we'll
Thank
wait for 1
you.
minute. We want to say thank you to you. We're going to just wait until everyone leaves and have a minute with you.